our main speaker tonight, which is Jamie with 38 years. And it's his birthday this month, 38 years. So come on up here.
All right.
Yeah. Very good.
All right, thank you. I'm Jamie, I'm an alcoholic. I'm also a high school dropout that became a doctor. That's what the visions for the, it says a vision for you in recovery. Well, it's really visions, as you keep on suiting up and showing up. I'm glad Matt got back because I met him at the Thai club, the Triangle Club, and he said he got sober in San Diego, same place I did. And you have to know that trying to get sober in San Diego when there's beach parties and all the beautiful women are at the beach parties, and if you go to try to get a beautiful woman at the beach party, you're going to drink. You're going to do drugs or whatever because that's the easier way to get the girl to, do whatever you want them to do, I mean, doing it sober, that's tough. And so when I first met Matt and he said he'd been there, 34 years and whatever, and we've been to meetings at some time earlier on in recovery. The other thing that's in a San Diego look is the look of hunger. You have this kind of crazy, psychotic look of hunger because in order to get sober there, you had to be hungry. You had to go to meetings. You had to, get to them. And that's the only way that we can stay sober. I've heard before that the reason why AA works is half of us come into the room and we're off. The other half of the room, people come in and they're in the room and they're on. We all leave together and we're all on just for that brief day, for that brief moment. That's how it works. The only other time I wear this jacket is, I found my way back to church and I wear it on Good Friday. Fortunately, they don't really look at it as you guys do. You guys know this is a pure alcoholic jacket, And I got it for the first time I was here, and I went to a Alcoholics Anonymous New Year's Eve party, and at the South Point or whatever, and I thought, well, I'll get a jacket for Vegas. So, in my recovery, I grew up in an Irish Catholic family. Right now, out of the 5 children, 4 of them are alcoholic. And I have a sister who's 2 years older than me, and she's a raging codependent because she couldn't fix any of us. She couldn't fix anybody, but she hates me the most because I'm her baby brother. And the reason why she hates me is because for whatever reason, my parents my mom was like a CEO before women were CEO. My dad was a E-flat soloist in the symphony, and, pretty, artistic people, responsible. My dad was a teacher. And so my mom used to get a Mexican housekeeper to take care of the kids and stuff. Well, Elizabeth took care of my sister for 2 years. When I was born, they couldn't find Elizabeth. She couldn't get across the border, so they got Ava. Well, Ava would come up, and she would bring me 1 cinnamon candy. And she would give me the cinnamon candy. I'd pop it in my mouth. And my sister would look with sheer envy. You know how codependents do that, They envy us sometimes, and they want to try to control that. Why are they so happy? They're drunks. Well, let me control them and make them unhappy. And, eventually, I think in 2 years of recovery, I gave her, I said, here's a whole bag of cinnamon candies. Will that help you? No, it won't. And we can't help her at all. The other reason why she resents me is on Easter Sunday, I told my dad, I want a hat. And so my dad takes her hat off my head, puts it on my head, and like a good alcoholic, I push it around, put the ribbon in front, walk right down the middle. And, obviously they probably had to know that something's got to be wrong with this kid. Something's not right. And, but that was the whole thing. And in that time, I didn't have any problem with believing that I was a child of God. I knew God, I felt God, we all do. We're all chosen here. Out of all the people that are drunks or addicts or people that die, each one of us was chosen. And we answered. We said yes. And we came and we got recovery. The other thing I might have to tell you is that I'm also a recovering homicidal maniac. I don't know if it's a maniac. I just only wanted to kill 5 people before I came in here. You know, the people, places, and things. And I wanted to kill 5 people. And by the grace of God, Jojo, wherever this man is, I lived in a condo and tennis courts, and Jojo was a penitentiary ex-con, had 4 teardrops at SA, Hispanic guy that lived above me. And, I started coming home and I started bringing weapons. And he's looking at me going, oh, jeez. But, it's not this clean cut guy. I had long hair and a wild beard and, look at this. Look at what I got, Jojo, Oh, okay, Holmes. And he'd sit there with his legs crossed and be smoking a cool cigarette. He'd go, all right, Holmes. He goes, listen, if you want to do this right, you got a good heart. Let me just take this weapon and I'll put it in my closet. And I'm going to grab it. And he said, no, it's okay, man. And then when you want to do that, then, we can do it together and you can get away with it. Because you see these 4 teardrops. Those are 4 people when I was a gangster and everything like that. I took those people out. They're always with me. And he says, you don't want that. You don't want to be haunted. You got a good heart. And the whole time I thought I could have a sober roommate with me, and that would keep me sober. Well, TK would, I'd watch him come back. He would come back in his little, Ford car or whatever, park it, come in, eat a hamburger, fries, or whatever, and then go out on his Harley bike, go to a meeting. And that was just too simple for me. I'm thinking, my God, what a boring life, How boring is that? So, the whole aspect of that is that really my first drunk was at about 6 years old. It was a blackout drunk, right from the beginning. I'm a complete blackout drunk. That's why I can say I was upset with people. I can't really say I'm upset with places or things because I don't really remember a lot of them. From time to time when I woke up, I don't remember it at all, And the issue at hand is my dad's an E-flat soloist in the symphony, and his emotions were in his music. And I remember he had white hair as a young man, and my mom would say in the symphony, she would say, look at the guy with the white hair. And it would get hushed, and then he would play some of the most beautiful music. I still have it on my heart. If I play the E-flat soloist, I can weep. The problem is that he's an Irish Catholic, and they don't have feelings. I know as a psychologist, from 0 to 8, children make subjective emotional decisions based on their environment. Well, kids are feeling. And people are talking thinking words and stuff like that, and I'm going, I'm hurt, I'm afraid, or whatever. I didn't even know what those words were until much later. And, so they go, what an Irish Catholic family does is they either tell you you sin and you need to go to confession, or they give you sarcastic comment, and you don't even know that you've received a comment that's sarcastic till maybe 3 days later, and then finally you go, oh, that's what that meant. Oh man, wow, that hurt. And the other thing that really kind of went wrong with me is that because of Ava, I spoke Spanish for the first 5 years of my life. And my brothers and sisters, and they're all mocking me, going, can't that kid talk yet? Ah, blah, 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 pinche cabrón, whatever, like that thing. Because that's the only, I knew that one because every time she came on Tuesdays, she would clean my brother's bed that he peed in and, chase him out of the house. So I knew that one, that was a good one, I mean, if I want to get fired up, what do you mean I can't talk English? Pinche cabrón, And, but then that whole thing is that when they put me up against the garage, they used to do that, then it's mockery, And being that now I'm a gentleman and not really, never really was able to express any other feelings. So, my anger, my hurt, my fear, I just stuffed it and stuffed it and stuffed it. And essentially what happens is it builds into resentment after resentment after resentment. My first wound, I put this on the pad, and I was going to take some notes, but there that goes, because I was talking to my sponsor today. I talk to him every Wednesday. He's 94, and we talked for a half hour, and I told one story. It was exactly 29 minutes, and he goes, all right, well, I'll talk to you next Wednesday, I thought, well, I'm not going to, I might have to talk pieces of that one. And so, the issue at hand is I wanted to be just like my daddy. And I saw my daddy, and I would say things, because I would just have the gift of gab. I'd say, Daddy, I want to wear a gray suit. Every day I want to have 7 gray suits, just like you do. I had no idea he only had 1 gray suit, And so he didn't like that, and so I used to carry a hoo-hoo and a ha-ha, which is a hoo-hoo is a clarinet, and a ha-ha was a saxophone. Walking around all the time doing this, boo, ha. And then I find out he teaches my brother, who's 5 years older than me, how to play clarinet. And my brother's not a musician. He's squawking and squeaking on the clarinet and everything. He couldn't get a good note even if he had, had it piped into him. And so what happened was my father, had me learn violin. And so I remember thinking that was a wound. He doesn't like me. He does not love me. Doesn't he know that I had a hoo-hoo and a ha-ha? What's that mean? I want to play clarinet. I want to learn that. I remember then going to a violin thing where we went to learn at San Diego State College. And I remember going to the little board with the magnets, and I grabbed a D off the board and I put it in my pocket, and that was when he died for me. That was it. I'll remember, I'll have this D many years later, and but at that moment, I was like, it's better that you were dead than to be hurt. The other aspect of it is my name is James Patrick. Well, Patrick is my father's name. I come from 2 grandfathers that are both alcoholic. We didn't even know that they existed. And Patrick was my father's father. And so there were times, many years, I never even knew, anything about him, no pictures or anything. My mom's father never knew anything about him or all that. A boy needs a grandfather, they need a father, they need that for the foundation. And I think that's why Alcoholics Anonymous, we meet a man that we can have as a sponsor, and that's what we heal. And they help us, they dust us off, and they clean us up, and then they put us in there and give us the foundation and say, now you go share that with others. That's the miracle of the program. So in that, then with my father, that commitment that he died, my sister with the cinnamon candies, I'm sorry that I was cuter than her, too bad, sorry, And with her whole thing with the hat and everything, it wasn't my fault that my dad gave me the hat. It wasn't my fault that, Ava gave me the cinnamon candy. To this day, she still resents me. She doesn't resent any of the other ones. She just resents me. And I'm the scapegoat. That's the position in the family I am. And because I can feel feelings and I process it out. But the messages in an Irish Catholic family are double-sided. They'll say something, give you a birthday card or something that has a message on it, and you think it's a loving birthday card, but then there's also a little dig underneath. And I remember my mom used to give me these little figurines, and one time she gave me a birthday frog with a crown on it. And I think I was about 7 or somewhere around there, and I'm thinking, she thinks I'm a frog. I didn't look at it, well, she, where am I going to get a kiss so I can become a prince, And those kind of messages, so I never had real clear understanding of what they're saying to me, and when I go to confession, what am I going to confess? Their sins? No, what, I'm bad, let me figure out something that or let me go do something bad, and that's usually what ended up happening. When I first went to my first grade in Catholic school, because I had to be bad or tough or whatever, my brother said, you got to be tough. Then, I get into the playground, so that I get some kid, I don't know who he was, and put him under the fence and beating the shit out of him just so that I could play the role. And I didn't know that was not appropriate. So all that, builds and it builds and it builds. The reason why I drank when I was 6 or 7 was a blackout. At age 5 is when a child gets their identity. I didn't have an identity. I didn't have a clear identity of who I was. I knew that I was a child of God, but that was fading because the way that we get to know, the message from God is through other people. Everybody's made in the image and likeness of God, And that's how we share. That's what God does. Good orderly direction for people that are still working on the higher power or, higher power, whatever it is. And it's amazing because Bill W. had that blast of awakening. And, and I thought it was interesting when he had a Jesuit, spiritual advisor. And the Jesuit, they're like the most learned priests and whatever. And the Jesuit says, well, no, I don't think that we want to talk about God. Let's leave it higher power, which is brilliant, right? Because all of us, at some point or whatever, I think the one lady has a shirt that says, it's not, I'm not going to heaven, I'm just getting released from hell. And I think that's what AA does for us. It releases us from the hell of having mixed messages and things like that. So at a nice, Irish Catholic family, we had a big family, everybody drank. Probably most of them were all in blackouts. I'm guaranteed, I know that my brother is 5 years old, was always in a blackout. And the only way that you could slightly tell that they were not in a blackout is when you're kind of interrogating and you find out, one time he came to a lake, he gets out of his mobile home, and I know that he's, I can see his little look because he's got a little beady eyes, kind of like just, playing it off. And he says to me, he goes, so James, how are the waves? And I realized, this bastard doesn't even know that he's not at the ocean, Give me a break, man, and here he's running my father's music store. He's the first son. I always called myself the second son. And because that was my role as a scapegoat, was to do things wrong, to break the tension, to break the edge, to clear it all up by doing something wrong. People could do whatever they did, penalize me, send me to confession. And I'm also the kid that they picked to do the incense on midnight mass because, didn't bother me. My eyes teared, and I liked the attention, be in the center spot, rock down the middle, even though this incense is probably still coughed from a little bit of that to this day. But I was being used. I was being used for my docility, my friendliness, my gentleness. And so at the party, 6 years, 7 years, somewhere around that, obviously I was in a blackout. I'm not too really clear. I know it was right after, it was after 5. I know that, and it was 6 or 7. And I noticed that some of the family members would leave their drinks on the table, half empty. Well, there are some, though, they must not be the alcoholics, The other alcoholics finished their drinks, and there's nothing of that. And what it was my aunt was an alcoholic. She just forgot where her drink was. And I picked up on that, and I started going, all right, she doesn't know where that drink is. Drink it down. She doesn't know where her drink is. And I follow her, like a good alcoholic, in training. How some kids get millionaire in training. I should have had a shirt that said alcoholic in training. And the whole thing is that I didn't know what alcohol did. I know it made other people feel good, and I felt good. And then I was in a blackout. And I remember coming out of the blackout, and they're walking me around, little kid, and I'm saying to my brother-in-law, you're my father. You're like my father. And when we look at people who we trust, now, 38 years later, that same guy is a two-bit con, been in the penitentiary, he's a con man. And look, I made him my father. Well, sure he's going to abandon me. Sure he's going to hurt me. Sure he's going to not be like a father. And but I always remember that. And I also remember that he's like, whoa, I don't want that. And so they kept me away from, the alcohol, or kept me away from the table for all the way until I got into about 8th grade. And I remember as 8th grade, I was an athlete. I could run like run as fast as I could. But really what it was is that the feelings and stuff, the only way that I could deal with what I had, boiling up inside was just to run, run as fast as I could and beat the hell out of whoever the last guy was. But it was dysfunctional. My identity was dysfunctional. When I ran and won the race, I didn't feel like I won. I never felt glad. I never felt joy. I felt like, kick your ass, man, And it was always, kind of with a little Irish, sarcasm or resentment. So then in the 8th grade, then, my 8th grade graduation, my brother was able to, somehow, get us some beer. My brother's idea, he's 5 years older, so he's already in high school. And his way of drinking was to set up little Dixie cups on the table, so there's like, 12, 13 Dixie cups. You fill them with beer and put on some punk rock Devo and start jumping around like that. And I thought, well, that's only 12 little Dixie cups. I didn't realize that as soon as you finish your 12th Dixie cup, he comes around, fills it up. You had to drink them for the whole song. And I was blasted, obviously, because I didn't know that was the rules. And he attacked me and beat me up. He was about 6'5", he was heavy. And, and he attacked me. And I remember the next big resentment was, someday I am going to kick your ass. That's what I'm going to do. I don't know which day, but I am going to do it. And I'm pleased to say that when I was 19 and I got sober the first time, there was a time where my sister said, Gentry's in the black house, he's choking Dad. And I ran up the stairs, came around the other room, popped him a couple times. He fell, he's a big guy. And everybody's like, you got to get away, you got to get away. And I said, no, I'm going to wait for this one. I'm waiting for this guy to wake up. I want him to know who hit him. And, but obviously from the backlash, that brief period of sobriety caused me to relapse. Because at 19, I had a 30-day treatment. But the thing was, is that every time I went back into the codependent family system, they're going to reduce me to a scapegoat. They're going to be the ones that, scapegoat is, Jesus was a scapegoat. They put your sins on you, and they slap you on the ass and put you outside the city. And, so that's the way I kind of grew up in that. My freshman year in high school, I think that's when I had my first joint. And my sister, who's 2 years older, was the first one to introduce me to that. And I also watched Cheech and Chong, shows. Oh, partying's okay, that's good. But before that, my only thing was to play professional baseball. My whole life, I wanted to be like Johnny Bench, the Big Red Machine. And anytime I was doing something, I'd be making little baseball diamonds. And I was going to do it. Scapegoat, I'm going to win. I'm going to play Major League Baseball. And as a freshman, I was good enough. I had Major League scouts come look at me. I could sit in the crouch. I could throw a ball from the crouch, throw it this way, drop it, throw it, and I could hit and I could run. And so I go to St. Augustine High School. It's an all-boys Catholic school. It happened to be that my father was fortunate, went into the music business during the Reagan years. And so all of a sudden, he went from just a poor teacher to wealthy. And my brother wanted to go to St. Augustine High School, but he wanted my brother to be in the band. So he's got to go to a public school. Catholic schools don't have bands. So he had a resentment towards the fact that I was going to get to go to St. Augustine High School. So he tells me, he says, look, okay, let me give you a couple of rules when you get into school. It's a pretty rough school. Kids, I go to see the school, and the kid jumps up, and they're playing Deep Purple, and he pounds them, and then my brother goes, how was it? How was the whole thing? Was that a good school? I said, oh yeah, that seems kind of neat. And so he goes, all right, well, so this is the deal. When you get into school, what's going to happen is that somebody's going to say something. If you're going to get in a fight with somebody, they're going to push you. And he says, and they're expecting you to push them back. He says, you're left-handed. He says, what you do is you take that left hand and clock them right here, right in the nose right here, and their nose will break and fight over. Well, he was setting me up to lose because you get 100 points when you go to a Catholic school, and you get demerits. And if you lose your points, then you get in trouble. And so you have to wear a tie to go to Mass, and most kids wear clip-ons. My dad always taught me how to wear a business tie under the tie, a real tie. And so they were recruiting, just like it was a Bishop Gorman in the 60s and 70s as the dominant team. Then they got a principal that only wanted scholars and gay priests and stuff like that. And so they recruited my freshman class, athletes and scholars. I'm audio. I see stuff and whatever, but I listen. I get it. And so I scored a 95 on the English exam by listening to whatever the thing said. Oh yeah, that's on, that's off. Even today, I read things and I go, yeah, that's on, that's off. And but the principal didn't think that, he thought I cheated. I must have cheated. I was probably 215 as a freshman. And but the 8th grade summer, we would always go up to Montana, and I'm training up in Montana gym with California techniques and things like that. And so I meet another California guy that's a junior, and he's tan, he's got flip-flops and everything. And he happened to just rip off Humboldt County, which is sensing me in the biggest marijuana place and whatever. And so he goes one time, he says, hey man, you wanna go to the lake? And I never, I smoked that one joint, but that wasn't, the thing. And so he goes, here, check this out. And that was really good sense of me, and it put me into, now I'm a natural contemplative, now that I know that. And so it put me into that kind of like being state, yeah, right on, man, this is kind of cool. And then we go up to the thing, and I'm thinking, now, do they know that I'm stoned, or no, what's the deal? But they knew as soon as I ordered 2 hot dogs and 2 hamburgers and, big old order of fries, something's the matter, No, not really. They just figured I was a big kid. And so, that was the whole thing. And so he sent me back with a big, nice, big package of weed. And but even in Montana, back then, even though that my parents were trying to be educated about, just say no to drugs, right? Reagan, just say no to drugs. And intuitively, I always knew the world's most powerful country can't keep drugs out of its borders. Give me a break, man. Just say no to drugs. Why don't you get the drugs out of the area? That was my kind of righteous indignation, And so, all alcoholics have righteous indignation until they get humbled by the first step. And so the whole thing is that then every morning I would get there, and the priest would put me up at the board, and he would shame me for sentence structuring and stuff, and just hound me. So the only way that I could deal with that was just to smoke some pot before I went, and sit there and take just massive abuse, mockery. The other thing was I had a freshman priest that was a teacher, and he was clearly homosexual. I didn't know what that was. And so I had a guy, we were practicing football practice in the morning and the afternoon. And I had a guy that was at my table, John Tarantino. He says, you should blow dry your hair. And I thought, can I move my table? And obviously this guy knew, well, okay, that's a thing against whatever, being homosexual or whatever. I didn't even know any of that existed. So then I'm doing okay, and other than that, I know that this guy doesn't like me, doesn't think that I'm, and so I go, and I'm getting ready to go to the senior class for a bunch of wimps. You're supposed to wear the propeller hat and hazing and stuff. And so a guy went to grab my tie, and I thought, that's a push. Pounded him in the head, and I lost probably 40 points. And then, so the senior, comes, and they're all coming. I got away, and then the senior comes, and they're all coming out. I come out of biology class, and they're going, they're setting it up for a fight. And so everybody's there in this school, a rich kid on this fancy car, and so he pushed me, and bam, I hit him. Well, there I'm automatically in probation. I'm like in severe trouble. And scouts left. So that was my other resentment, was that I lost that. That was my resentment against myself. From that point on, I went bat crazy, because I thought, F them, F me, that baseball's over. Now, let me get to real quick about the miracles of recovery. I went to 2 treatment centers. At 19, I went through a 30-day treatment, came back to the family, got dysfunctional. Made it another couple years. Learned that I could, commit suicide and smoke a little PCP and jump off the bridge. By the grace of God, I'm heading to go get that, and I missed the exit. And I ended up on the exit over the freeway, headed back, and I ended up at my mom and dad's store, and I asked to go to treatment again, another 30-day treatment. Then at 23, which is when I got sober at 1987, the resentment and everything that had built up became to where I was homicidal. I can't kill myself, I'm too narcissistic. So then if I just get rid of these 5 people, I might have I might be okay. Just simple, not that bad. And so I came to JoJo and I'm ready to go. And I was doing performance art, Huey the Intergalactic Rock Star with a yellow wig and saxophone and whatever, bird beak and everything. And then people give me drugs and I would just make them laugh hard. And so I was making money and getting free drugs and stuff. And so JoJo, I come to him, I tell him, there's these 5 people I want to kill. So he goes, hey, wait, Holmes. I still had the sober roommate. Good Catholic kid, always had a Sacred Heart of Jesus candle. I believe that my sober roommate lit this candle and was praying. When it says the word pray, it means ask earnestly. I know that there must have been so many people praying for my soul. Absolutely. 100%. Because a lot of times I was a happy-go-lucky guy, fun to be with and everything. Just when I did, drinking and drugs, that's when it became a problem. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Mr. Hyde only come out on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Dr. Jekyll would step in and be the college kid and whatever else. So JoJo says to me, he goes, whoa, Holmes. He goes, whoa, man, why don't you say a prayer? And he was a drug dealer, and so he goes, he opens up the door to go out, and I jump off his balcony. He's looking off the balcony. He goes, Holmes, that's not good, for me. That's not good. And so I went in, and he says, if you get it together, you can come and we'll go take care of it, and they won't even know. So I go down there, and I'm thinking, and then finally I could hear God's intuitive voice. I could feel the peace. It was just a beat, And so finally I fell to my knees, and I said, God, what the F do you want? And you know what God said? Go to the mountains. And I thought, wow. So I walk out, it's 5 in the morning, it's 4-lane highway. I got my wig because that was my business. And I called a friend, Luann, that used to take me up the mountains. She used to clean my mom and dad's house. And I told her, I'm coming, come and get me. And so I walk out in the middle of the highway. Cars just stopped. They just pulled over to the side and they're just looking at me. Part the Red Sea. Whoa, look at that. And but they were looking at me like, man, something is really the matter with this guy. And I get to the kind of wooded area, and it's a little bit of mist and some horses. And that's when I had my moment of clarity to where I just looked. I took a big sigh and I said, this is what life is about. This is what it's about. Pure, infused grace and everything leaving. And so I go up to Luann's house, and Stanley was an ex-biker guy, and he put me up in his trailer, and then, he comes up to the trailer, he's got my mom and dad, and I'm thinking, I was just gonna live up there, and he comes up to me, gets in the trailer, he goes, I got kids here, and you're not safe for those kids. And I thought, well, really? Why? And so they said they were going to take me to a safe place. And so it's this, place up in the mountains, a farm, long-term recovery. It's called Rancho La Brea. It's not in now, but it's where doctors go and, people that can afford it. And it's a long time. You can stay there as long as you want. And I went there and I was like, this isn't going to work again. And Joe was a recovering biker guy with a nice clean beard, nice hair. And he stood up and he got right in my nose and he says, where are you going? Where are you going to go? But he said it with such a kindness and such a love that I knew that he really cared about me. He really wanted me to be well. And I took a sigh and I kind of stepped back because that kind of love was like, wow, And so he stepped into my face again. He goes, you have nowhere to go. And I thought, Okay, all right, I'll stay. And they gave me a suite on the corner. And Tom Kennedy is a retired Vietnam vet. I came up, I had long hair, doing my saxophone, and Tom just looked at me and he goes, "Hey, Holmes." He goes, "Yeah, I don't think you need to really go to any meetings just yet." He goes, "Why don't you just walk around, look at the pigs, the ducks, kind of walk around. At night," he says, "go lay out on the dirt there and look at the stars, count the stars." Because he knew I was completely psychotic, sociopath, completely messed up. And thank God for that. And then finally he invites me to group. And there's this nice little beach guy. I had a pool, it had sauna, it's a nice place. I might even want to stay there now, And so I get in the group and they go, "All right, everybody go around with the feelings. Mad, sad, glad, afraid, ashamed, hurt." And so this guy, he'd been in treatment, he's a wealthy kid, and he says, "Tom, I'm a little bit hurt, a little bit afraid, sad. My dad pays a lot of money for me to be here, and I'm mad." And Tom says, "Why?" He goes, "Well, because the pool chairs that are out there are, there's a couple straps missing there." And I stood up and I went, shook the trailers. And Tom says, "Are you mad?" I said, mad, I'm mad. Yeah, I'm mad." He goes, "Okay, quit the group." Brought me into a room, and he sits there. He says, "How you doing, Holmes?" I said, "Oh, I'm fucking good now. I feel a little bit better, Blew that up. That's nice, not bad." And then he asked me a couple of other questions. And I go, no, that's effing bad, And he goes, "You were a good little Catholic boy, wouldn't you?" He said, "Would you cuss in front of a Catholic boy?" I said, "Child." I said, "No, of course not. I would never do that." And he goes, "All right, well, so what we're going to do is a little inner child work." And he goes, "It's a doll." And I was terminally cool. That's really the core of my disease. I was terminally cool to avoid life on life's terms, to avoid having to get involved with taking responsibility and growing up or dealing with my feelings or learning how to communicate. And so I told man, "Yeah, there's no way I'm walking around with a doll. No way, man. That's not going to work." And so he goes, "All right, well, let me go back in there." He knew my whole story where there was a biker war and people were dying on the street and everything. It was a big thing to happen in Elkhorn in '87. And so he gives me a bear, and it had no eyes, no ears, and a little stitch on the mouth, and it had a red and white scarf, which is Hell's Angels colors. And he says, "How's this?" With a firm look like, "You'll take this bear, won't you?" And he says, "And I want you to take this bear, and I want you to carry it to all your meetings. I want you to treat it like it's your child. Because the issue at hand is I just grew up too soon. I didn't get to be a child. I was trying to fit in with the Joneses or the McRaes in this case. And so I took the little bear and I go, "All right, Tom, all right, man." So I go in and I take a nap, and I took a deep, deep sleep. And I woke up and I said, "Wow," I had the eyes of wonder. And I was like, "Man, this is life, right? Right on." And from that point on, I carried it to all of my meetings, had a little bag for it, set it up on the table. That's what crazy people do when they really, really want to get sober. And I really, really wanted to get sober. I had to. This was my last chance. I've been in there 90 days. I'd had a head-on collision. Some kid I thought hit me. And I was really righteously indignation at the fact that this guy hit me. Everybody used to hit me. I'm in a blackout, but people hit me. And I don't really remember, how the accident occurred, but I'm guessing it was their fault, And so Tom says to me, "Well, you're going to court." And he says, "You got a fancy lawyer." He says, "I'm going to tell you one thing." He says, "Until you take responsibility, then everything that you experience, and he knocks on wood, he goes, negative consequences of your disease. It says either you're going to take responsibility for your recovery, work the steps, work the program, go to meetings, talk to people, share, or God will bring you 6 feet under. And he said it with such a deep love, I'm thinking, I don't want to die. I really don't want to die. I thought I wanted to die, but no, I don't want to die. And so then at that point, then he says, well, so when you go into court, he says, you got this corporate lawyer? He says, what happens? I said, well, usually Pete goes in the back with the judge and stuff like that. And he comes out, and they come out, and they already worked on their agreement. He whispers in my ear, don't say anything when they ask you to talk. And he gave me a script, and he says, when the judge asks you to talk, you have to tell him, I'm irresponsible, take the keys from me, don't let me live in a house or a facility by myself until I can show you that I'm a responsible person and respectable. That's what this program does for us. It makes us participating people in our society. We carry the message of God's love. That's what we do. We're redeemed sinners. The word sin means to err. And when my sponsor, who is a psychologist, had me look that up, and I remember filled with shame and my sin, and he goes, well, look up the root of the word, and it says to err. And I thought, wow, I just got to practice more. That's all. And so I've been practicing now for 38 years. And for anybody that's working on their program, sometimes it's not a day at a time. Sometimes my sponsor will tell me, go look at your feet and look around. That's where you're at. And he says, and don't move your feet until you feel peace and serenity. And so I did that. I did everything that he told me to do. He told me you can get a bunch of sponsors, you can get a bunch of old timers, and when you speak from your heart, when you speak like you really want to get recovery, and suggestions or subtle commands, and you tell them you got a couple of suggestions, and look for someone that's just about as crazy as you, and they'll give you a couple of suggestions. And so I went to a speaker meeting, and there's this guy, Bob, he was a big cocaine dealer in New York, and everybody's like, wow, man, he's on the stock market and everything. And I'm looking, I wasn't really fazed by that because, I was bona fide crazy as you could get. And the thing that made me ask him, would he help me, was he had nice hair on the side and 2 strips of hair like this. And he would talk and he had this wild look on his face and and I thought, that guy doesn't even know he's bald. He didn't even know that, man. He's still doing the 2 hairs. What's going on, man? That's the guy I need to talk to, man. Maybe I can help him get some hair or something. I don't know. And so I asked him. He gave me a job. Well, the thing was, when I went to court and I told him what I wanted to do, the judge went, boom, a year. He gave me a year, and I remember calling Tom from the jail. They took my ring and all my things. They stripped me down. And I go, Tom, they gave me a year. I'm going to miss Christmas. I'm going to miss all the holidays. He goes, it's okay, Holmes, He says, you got something to knock on? That's the negative consequences of your disease. And he says, you keep on doing that. At some point, you're going to begin to say, that's the rewards of my recovery. And now I could just knock and knock and knock and knock. It's beyond blessings. It's phenomenal. Every day is a blessing. Just phenomenal. The people I meet, Matt, my friend Sean there, and all of you, I forget what your name, because I think I might have smoked that one out. That part of the brain, quite honestly, I have to honestly tell you that I think that's one part that I might have destroyed forever. So I might ask you, but the one guy we're sitting there eating, and he's talking about, ordering a margarita. And I thought, my God, order a margarita, a virgin margarita, you can't do that, relapse. The reason why I relapsed the first 2 times out of recovery in the recovery home or the rehab was because I got in a relationship with a girl. What's the program say? Don't get into a relationship for at least a year. Well, I'm a raging Irish Catholic ball of lust, man. Jeez, man, what? I can't do anything, man. At least I can have sex, And But, not a lot of women were too attracted to the long hair and the wild beard and the crazy eyebrows and stuff like that. Pretty hard to get a girl like that. And, but what happened was when the judge sentenced me, and I remember I get downtown jail, San Diego, a black guy sits up, he's a gangster, Mr. White, he says, Mr. McRae, you can do the time or the time will do you. And I said, wow, what's that mean? He says, well, you want to become a assistant, and then what you want to do is you want to get in the kitchen. That's what you want to do. And so I did. I got in the kitchen. You get ice cream, you get anything you want. Make bologna sandwiches, stuff like that. And then he tells me, you want to get up to the fire camp and tell them you're an alcoholic, and they'll get you up to the real nice camp where you don't have to go fight fires. I want that. So I go to the ash dorm, and I'm up there, and it's up in the mountains. It's like, summer camp. It's beautiful. Every once in a while we had to drive the buses down, and there was a lawyer that was in there with me, and I remember one time he's getting, I don't know what he had, maybe just a couple of drunk drivings, and so he had books in his jacket like this, all like that, and the probation officer says, you can't take all that on the bus. And he gave him some legal things or whatever, and the probation officer shut his mouth. So then I'm like, well, I'm going to bring books. You're on the bus for, freaking 3 hours, 3.5 hours, 3.5 hours back, and you watch people that are just going, I'm going, my God, man, how do you do that? How do you not think of one thing? And my mind started to come back. And so I started reading. One of the books I got was a praise book. And the guy, I forget, Carruthers or something, he says, what you do is you look out the window and you go, thank you, God, for that tree. I praise you. Thank you, God, for my shirt. I praise you. Thank you, God. And what it did is it got me to be grateful for everything I had. God taught me to be thankful, and even to this day, that's what I do in the morning with a couple hours of meditation, and I'm thankful. And I help the homeless, and I love to be with the homeless, even with my degrees and everything. There's nothing that they could ever pay me other than to give them dignity and treat them with respect. And, if I can't help them, give them a ride, save them 15,000 steps down the street. I thought I could help them recover and things like that, but it's a difficult thing. I didn't get the money to get somewhere, so I guess that's not God's will. I thank Matt for volunteering me, and I appreciate that. Believe it or not, I'm more of an introvert. Probably doesn't look like that. And but the way to offset introvert is to wear a flashy jacket and get some space, I guess, And no, I like flashy clothes. The first time I cried when I was 19, I'd been outward bound, and I went out and I did all these things, and I went out in the desert. They have a day where you're there a day and a half, and this was one of the times in my recovery. They come and tell me directions, but I didn't listen. At 19 and 21, I didn't listen. I couldn't listen. My mind, everything was going too fast. And so the guy tells me the directions back. I didn't hear him. I thought I heard him. And I was lost in the desert for about 4 hours. Started to get hot. I got back to the group. And it was the first time that I learned how to cry as a man. Because I got there, I had a cool little hat, desert hat, with a bonsai sticker on it. And they reamed me. They said, son, we could die out here. Are you paying attention? And that just felt like, a lot of criticism. I didn't like it. It hurt, And I started to cry, put my hat down. And I remember this old man picks my hat up and he goes, listen, son, for every tear you shed, it's going to be a rainbow to your happiness. So now I have teal suits, I have yellow suits, I have purple suits, I have all kinds of different colors. Fortunately, God helped me to meet a suit salesman. And so, that's what I like. It makes me happy. And I like going into the traditional Catholic Church because they just wear black. And a lot of times they didn't know what to do with me. But then when they saw that I actually pray and I stay there and I'm in quiet contemplation because I have a relationship with my Father. I have a relationship with my God. And it's my God. It's a thing that I'm a child of God. You're all children of God. And no matter what, nobody's going to take that away from me. And so I'm very grateful that you allow for me to kind of ramble and babble. I think it's much better than the notes I might have made because I got through about 8 pages and it was just one little story. So I figured I better go. And when I was driving up here, I heard the Lord say to me, "Speak and I'll give you the words." So I hope I said something that's important. I appreciate your time. God bless you and your families. Stay sober. No matter what.